Verdugo, Lee Pearl Govan Jr., maybe? Joined by the one and only Mr. Gil Cedillo, council member from the 1st District.
Buenas tardes, soy madre y abuela de la comunidad Pico Junior y soy voluntaria de No Más Licorerías. Y estamos aquí para decirle a ustedes que estamos saturados de nuestra comunidad de tanta licorería. Y pues le pedimos que ya no den más licencias a esa comunidad por el bien de nuestros hijos, de nietos que ahorita están creciendo y hay muchos problemas en la calle. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Again, she indicates that she's a mother. She comes from Pico Union. She's against the proliferation of liquor stores. She seeks that the committee schedule the motion and that no liquor stores continue to receive licenses in the community for the benefit of children.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Irma Sinay, soy una de las madres que luchan y les doy gracias por extender la extensión que nos dieron y es todo, gracias.
Thank you.
Her name is Irma Sinay. She's a mother, and she thanks the committee for extending the motion.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Cándida Rodríguez, yo pertenezco a un grupo de voluntarias llamada Madres que Luchan. Nosotros estamos trabajando por una comunidad más limpia, pero también estamos trabajando también con todo esto de no más licorerías. Así como nos gusta ver nuestra comunidad limpia, también nos gustaría que nuestros jóvenes crecieran en un ambiente más sano, que es no más licor, no más ventas de licor en esos lugares. Les agradecemos por la extensión que dieron, pero le podemos pedir que por favor puedan agendarnos para futuras sesiones que tengan. Y gracias por el apoyo que nos dan y pues todo sea porque nuestros hijos crezcan en un mejor ambiente y con más salud para el futuro. Gracias.
Her name is Candida Rodriguez. She's a community activist who's concerned about neighborhoods and the proliferation of liquor stores. She thanks the committee for the extension of the motion and requests that the motion be placed on an upcoming agenda, and thanks you for your work.
Hi, my name is Raul Verdugo from Alcohol Justice, and I'd like to thank the committee for taking this preliminary step towards the advancement of the RS motion. Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Lee Pearl Govan Jr. I want to thank you also. First of all, I wanted to say the Bible tells me to pray for those in leadership. So I wanted to say I'm praying for you, and also that Jesus loves you, and because much given, much is required. But I'm here, it's new to me. I just wanted to say I have experienced drug and alcohol in my life, partying with entertainers all across the country. And so I'm asking if you would consider agendizing the RES motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Delara, Marina Cintron, Megan Steinman, Rika Blanks, Lydia Lysing.
Hi, my name is Veronica Delara. I am a program director at Public Salud, and I am a member of LADAPA. The Alliance wants to thank the following council staff for helping us in this process and getting RS extended. And that is thanks to Kristen, Lucy, and Salomon from CD8, Andrew from CD3, Nick and Emma from CD4, Edgar and Sherilyn from CD9, Arturo and Jose from CD1. And thank you, Plum Committee members. We thank you for hearing us, and we hope to continue working with you in the future with agendizing RS. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marina Cintron. I'm also a member of LADAPA. I wanted to emphasize, although my group's here to thank the committee and the chair for extending the RS motion one more year, it still is not agendized. So we are not declaring victory today. We look forward to working with all the members and their staffers continuously to not only agendize it, but actually have it in our neighborhoods so it works in our communities. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Rika Blanks, and I'm a member of the Coalition to Prevent Alcohol-Related Harms in LA Metro, also known as COPAM. On behalf of the coalition, I would like to extend a thank you to the Plum Committee for extending the timeline for the ARIS ordinance, and we appreciate your concern for the communities we serve, and we hope to continue working with you to move the ordinance forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Lee. As a member of LA DAPA, I also wanted to thank the community for listening to the community. We think this is a great step towards protecting the children in our community, and we hope for your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This concludes our general public comment speakers, and we'll go on to the agenda. We have a request, Mr. Mejia, to continue item number 7.
That's correct, Councilman. There's an extension letter. The extension is provided through April the 30th, 2019.
And my understanding is that we also have such a request for item number 8.
Yes, Councilman. In this one, the letter provides an extension through February 27th, 2019.
All right. Yes, sir, Mr. Smith.
Yes, and I'd ask that number 5 be continued 1 week.
All right, and we have number 5 continued for 7 days.
Yes, Council.
All right, so in recognition of those requests, can that be the order on those 3 items? And we will receive and file item number 1.
Okay. Yes.
As the director has a big report for us in store in the coming weeks that we are not prepared to preview today. And that takes us to item number 2.
That's correct, Councilman. Councilman, the question being is, are there any multiple speaker items?
There are none.
Thank you, Council. Item 2, Councilman, this is a Cultural Heritage Commission report relative to the inclusion of the Comedy Union as a historic cultural monument.
Okay, so if looks like we have comments from staff on this matter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Ken Bernstein with the Office of Historic Resources. As this item was being prepared for consideration by committee, it was discovered that there was an additional mailing address, county assessor's mailing address in our ZEMA system where notice had not been sent to the property owner. We're therefore requesting that this item be received and filed so that we can go back and send the mailing notice to both of the addresses on record at Cultural Heritage Commission and bring this back to the committee.
Excellent. So we'll receive and file this per the report. That moves us to item number 3.
Item 3, Councilman, this is again a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission relative to the inclusion of 1110 through 1116 South Abbott Kinney Boulevard as a historic cultural monument.
Again, Ken Bernstein, Office of Historic Resources, Department of City Planning. This is a one-story commercial building on South Abbott Kinney Boulevard in Venice, constructed in 1923. This was, starting in the 1960s, a building occupied by various post-war period artists and musicians, including John McCracken, Henry Parch, and John Altoon. Frank Gehry designed a live-work plan for this building in 1967, and it's continuously served as a studio and residence for the artist, among others, Frederick Eversley, since 1969. The Cultural Heritage Commission recommended that this met 2 of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance criteria. First, for its cultural significance, for its association with early commercial development along the former Venice Short Line, and for its association with post-war music and visual arts in Venice, especially the West Coast minimalist and light and space movements, and secondly, for its association with historic personages, including artists John McCracken, Henry Parch, and Frederick Eversley.
Thank you. So we have 10 public comment cards on this item. So if you can just hang out for a second, we can hear from folks. Reem Barudi, Jesse Laddick, Demetrio Karrason, Allison Berg, Larry Jones. Come on up, any order.
Hello, my name is Reem Baroudi, and I'm the preparer of the nomination. I represent the applicants. I was under the impression that I would have 5 minutes, but perhaps that's not the case. Beginning in the 1960s, incredible numbers of artists moved into Venice. Robert Irwin, Larry Bell, Dwayne Valentine, John McCracken, and Fred Eversley. They've become the art ambassadors of Los Angeles. The movements they pioneered are what put LA on the map as a major art city and the development of a uniquely LA look. John McCracken is one of the most celebrated artists of the entire minimalist movement. He has showcased in every exhibition of the period since he first burst on the scene in 1965. In 1965, America's most famous maverick composer, Harry Parch, moved next door to McCracken. That fall in the studio, Parch embarked on the rehearsals of his masterwork, Delusion and the Fury, recorded by Columbia Records. I'm so sorry.
No, you
Misunderstood.
finish your sentence, finish your thought, that's fine.
Harry Parch is one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century. Familiar names such as Lou Reed and composers like Danny Elfman see him as a great inspiration. John Altoon was also in that studio, and Fred Eversley, one of the most significant African-American contributors to the light and space movement, is currently a tenant of 110 Abbot Kinney Boulevard.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Jessie Laddick. I am day-to-day a senior field officer for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, but I'm here today as a citizen, someone familiar with the neighborhood, with Venice, and in support of this nomination. I'm confident that you can understand that the contributions of these artists, the civic LA history component is important not only to Venice, but above and beyond that, there's also the architectural character of this neighborhood, of this corridor, that has the incredible value above and beyond just the people that are associated with it. We have a multifaceted kind of layers of value that I think you can support through your support of this nomination. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Demetrio Karrasin, and I'm here in support of the designation. You know that big box stores and soulless malls proliferate the LA landscape. The architecture, like 1110 to 1116 South Abbot Kinney Boulevard, gives a neighborhood a sense of place and time. In fact, the building sits in the middle of the last continuous block of masonry buildings on all of Abbot Kinney. This block looks today much as it did when it was constructed nearly 100 years ago. I'm a New Yorker. I now live in LA. We want to protect this legacy for future generations. Thank you, council members. I urge you to designate the building historic cultural monument. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Allison Berg. I am here as an arts patron, a trustee of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, a trustee of many other cultural institutions in LA, and most important, as a concerned citizen who loves Los Angeles and believes that as we continue to build the city of the future, which is now here, we can only do it well by standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. And the four incredible people who launched the space at 1110 to 1116. South Abbot Kinney literally launched the post-war contemporary art movement that put LA on the art world map. I believe that this institution is here to preserve such monuments, and we need to do our duty to make sure that historic architecture and legacies are not destroyed.
Hello, my name is Larry Jones, and I've been passionately collecting art for nearly 25 years. When I moved to Los Angeles from New York years ago, I learned very quickly that LA was not the artistic wasteland that so many of my friends back east had told me. LA's art community is rich, vibrant, diverse, and important, but it really didn't happen in a big way until at the later half of the 20th century. So there wasn't a substantial 200-plus year history of art like there is on the East Coast. This is why I believe Southern California artists didn't get their recognition until recently. This reasoning makes the art created by Harry Parch, John McCracken, John Altoon, and Fred Eversley even more important to the cultural legacy of Southern California. To know that these artists all worked in the same neighborhood, in the same building, is amazing to me. It is almost hard to comprehend that so much important art was conceived and created inside this space. I am a huge proponent of Los Angeles, and that Los Angeles be recognized on a national and international basis for its contributions, and I hope that you will consider this proposal.
Council members, my name is Megan Steinman. I'm the director of the Underground Museum, a celebrated arts and culture center in Arlington Heights. We actually began as an artist studio as well. We were founded by an artist named Noah Davis. We now host exhibitions, a wellness and fitness program, a movie program, all of which we give to Los Angeles citizens for free. But again, we were started as an artist studio, and so I'm here to support our friend Fred Eversley, who has exhibited at the Underground Museum, but also all artist studios in Los Angeles from which our culture is created, the culture of Los Angeles, and which we really do need to protect. So please, please, please do consider this when you are voting for the designation of this building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gray. I work for the...
Did I call your name, Jeff?
No.
Okay, hang tight.
Cool. I don't think I signed up. Can you sign
Well,
up?
if you didn't sign up, I'm not going to call your name, so you gotta sign up. We gotta have everybody signed up. Thanks. Stuart Krimko, Henrik Turner, Melvin Shear, Catherine Jerka, and then we'll have the one last speaker when he signs up.
Hello, my name is Stuart Krimko, and I'm honored to voice my enthusiastic support for the nomination of 1110, 1116 South Abbot-Kinney Boulevard as a historical cultural monument. I'm a director at David Kordansky Gallery, and we represent Fred Eversley, who's lived at the building and worked there since 1969. He is one of the essential artists to shape Los Angeles' first homegrown and internationally recognized art movement, Light and Space. This studio building also houses the visions and memories of a community of landmark artists, Altoon, McCracken, Harry Parch, and Gary, and it's an indispensable part of our municipal history. When you're in the space itself, you're moved by the sense of place and history embedded in its walls. You see the tools that Eversley invented himself to generate his sculptures, Gary's interior design, and the atmospheric light of the West Coast. Running a gallery like ours that seeks to present both the history and future of art made in conversation with Los Angeles, spaces like this are indispensable to preserve for future generations. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, my name is Henrik Turner. I am an art historian from Sweden. And when the world looks to Los Angeles for its contributions to art history, the Light and Space movement shines very brightly. And two of the artists who are some of the most important representatives of this movement have had and have their studios in this building. John McCracken and Fred Eversley. And I wish that you designate this building as a historical cultural monument. Thank you for your time.
My name is Melvin Shear. I came to Venice 50 years ago as a physician with an intensive background in music and fine arts. It took me about 5 minutes to realize that Venice was the capital of something new. That the art and space movement, new pictorial representation, and new experimental music was all in Venice, and a lot of it was in a single space. I came to the conclusion very shortly after that New York was the past, and that Venice, in particular, was the future of art. And I think I was proven right. New York is a place that sells art. Los Angeles and Venice at that time had been a place that made art. The studio is the last vestige of a landmark time in Los Angeles, and it needs to be preserved as the capital of that movement.
it needs to be preserved for Los Angeles, for the U.S., and for the international scene. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Yurka, and I'm here to ask you to support the nomination. I'm here because apart from Broadway, Abbot Kinney is my favorite street in all of Los Angeles, precisely for its human scale, which its property exemplifies. I'm also here because of my passion for the arts. I'm a film professor at Caltech, and we're currently hiring a faculty member in visual culture. And among the 350 applications that we received are applications that talk about the light and space movement and LA minimalism. And I want to assure you that this is a living history and that this history and this building matter. And I'm thrilled to think that you will honor the history of this movement and the individuals who contributed to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have one last speaker, if you can come on up.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gray. I work for the landlord. He wants to put on the record that he's strongly against having this designated as a monument. Right now, they're evicting the tenant, and they're supposed to get taken out probably the next 2 weeks, and then it's never been open to the public, so I don't know what we're preserving. I'd like to just go on the record.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments from staff in response to anything that we heard from public comment? There are not. Okay. Is there anyone from Council District 11 in the room? Seeing no one, I'll invite comments from members. None? Well, I want to thank everybody who came down to present. I know Venice is a long way from here. And you treated all of us to a art education, or a little mini education, about the space and light movement, I think it is. Mr. Eversley has an exhibit in Lamert Park right now, so this helped put it in context for me, so we appreciate you all for coming here. So I'll move that we include 1110 through 1116 South Abbot Kinney Boulevard, located at 1110 to 1116 South Abbot Kinney Boulevard in the list of historic cultural monuments. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Hearing no objection, that'll be the order. All right, congratulations. You guys are done. That takes us to item number 4.
Item 4, Councilman. This is a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission. It's relative to the inclusion of the Community Laundry Company building as a historic cultural monument located in CD4.
Again, Ken Bernstein, Office of Historic Resources and Department of City Planning. This is a 1927 two-story industrial building located on North Highland Avenue, designed originally by architect W.J. Saunders in the Mayan Revival architectural style. The Cultural Heritage Commission found that the property met 2 of the Cultural Heritage Ordinance criteria. First, as an excellent and rare example of a 1920s industrial building in the entertainment industry support area of Hollywood. And second, as an excellent and rare example of concrete industrial architecture in Hollywood.
Thank you. We have a handful of public comment, 3 public comment speakers here. We have Carrie Jones, Brian Curran, and Emma Howard.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Jones. I'm the attorney for American Linen, and our objections are in the record. This is an operating laundry. We have 180 employees on site. Miraculously, this has been an operating laundry for 90 years, and our initial concerns were surrounded the notion that a lot of the improvements we need to make on an ongoing basis to this building are interior related. We had a very productive meeting with the Hollywood Heritage folks last week. We have a conceptual agreement that we would both consent to going forward with a limited designation for this building, which would limit it to the exterior only. So we'll kind of preserve our objections, but work with Hollywood Heritage here before we go to final council on coming up with the language on what that means in terms of the exterior only restriction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Curran representing Hollywood Heritage. We
we were delighted at the findings of the Cultural Heritage Commission in recognition that, although we don't have the cultural punch of the Abbott Kinney property, this building does have its links to early Hollywood, not only in the design of its industrial buildings, but also in the fact that it retains its original business after nearly a century. It was important to Hollywood heritage that not only the architectural significance of the building be preserved, but also the recognition of that, the importance of that legacy business and industry remain in operation. So we were happy to work with the Steiner Corporation to create a designation where it would be exterior only, to allow them maximum flexibility for any alterations or changes as the laundry industry and technology advances. So we hope that you support the nomination as well.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Emma Howard, Senior Planner for Councilmember Rue. Late last week, I discussed the nomination of this building with representatives of the Hollywood Heritage, who met with representatives of the owners of the Community Laundry Company building. It's our understanding that Hollywood Heritage is now amending their request to support an exterior-only designation, and there appear to be no character-defining interior features or equipment of concern. So the owners' representatives would also be in support of this modification. I've also spoken with Ken Bernstein and Melissa Jones at the Office of Historic Resources to let them know that we had this conversation and to see if there were additional concerns. To our knowledge, there are no concerns about impacts to interior features at this time. Given this information, our office supports the applicant's request that the council consider all the testimony today and instructs city staff to amend the Cultural Heritage Commission recommendation to apply cultural monument status as an exterior-only designation for the community laundry building. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, given the testimony, I'll move that we approve the inclusion of 900 to 930 North Highland Avenue in the list of historical cultural monuments insofar as only the exterior of the building would be subject to the HCM.
Second.
It's been seconded. Hearing no objection, that'll be the order. Where does that take us, Mr. Mejia?
The last item, Councilman, this is a report from the Planning Commission. It's a proposed ordinance to regulate collection bins in the city.
All right, we have a report from staff on this.
Good afternoon. Phyllis Nathanson from the Planning Department. The ordinance before you is a code amendment that would regulate collection bins. They're also known as donation bins, and these are bins used for receiving drop-off donations of personal property like clothing and housewares. And they're currently unregulated, and as being unregulated, they've been the source of multiple problems in communities like overflow of donations and trash, being located in unsafe locations, and unclear information as to the beneficiaries of the donations. The ordinance would require these bins to have a permit from Building and Safety and would place restrictions on their location and have standards that they must comply with. Some of those standards would be that they would be restricted to commercial zones on property having at least one operating business. They would be required to display information such as the operator contact information, whether the donations would be for non-for-profit or for-profit, their pickup schedule, and the types of donations accepted. And they would also be required to contain a locking mechanism to prevent unauthorized access. And the bins would also be subject to an annual fee and inspection through the AIM program, which is the Annual Inspection and Monitoring Program. And just like auto repair and junkyards and recycling centers.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing further from staff, there's questions or comments, Mr. Cedillo? Nope. Mr. Bloomfield.
Great, thank you. First, I really want to thank Mr. Price for bringing forward this motion. This is really important. These donation bins have been a blight in my my community have been a real problem in many respects. And in fact, we went out and tried to remove several of them, and each one has a crazy story attached. When we start, it took a lot of work to get rid of a lot of them, and turns out a whole bunch of them are owned by a company, or companies such as Unirag sell goods for profit that are come in them, so they often are not what they seem. When they seem like, you know, if you're giving something to Salvation Army or some organization that's going to return it to the community, it's not. It's being sold for rags. So I think it's great what we're doing here. We've encountered countless problems. I did have a few questions and a few ideas of what I hope would be some friendly amendments to make this even stronger. But just to start with a question, what are the proposed fines for non-compliance or registering with the city? And I say this because having had to get some of these removed, it's incredibly costly. Sometimes it takes a crane or a 16-wheeler, we found, to be able to get one of these things removed.
So I can speak to the annual fee. They're required to pay a fee of $457 to be a part of the AIM monitoring program. And there are also representatives here from Building and Safety that probably give you better information about their enforcement program.
Okay. Happy to hear about that. We want to make sure you have the tools to do what you need to do.
Good afternoon, council members. Frank Lara, Department of Building and Safety. So relative to enforcement, locations that do not obtain a permit, they would fall into the same enforcement procedure as other unapproved construction uses. We would issue an unapproved or an order to comply. That order to comply would have a fee involved if they don't remove the bin within the compliance period, which typically is 15 to 30 days. Then we escalate enforcement by referring over to the city attorney and potential criminal prosecution.
Great. And so I guess one thing I was thinking we would add to this is requesting that the fines for non-compliance be raised to better cover the cost of actual removal, so that you have that in your toolbox. Does that sound like a reasonable approach, or are you okay with just going with the criminal penalty?
But by actual removal, I don't understand, because the department wouldn't be removing the bin.
Right. So when they're getting fined, and the city ends up, sometimes we've had this come into play where they wouldn't remove it, and the city went in and removed it at great expense. So what I'd like to see is, as you mentioned, the escalating fines, but to a point where the fines could actually cover the cost of the removal of these bins if they need to be, if they don't voluntarily remove them.
Well, I'm not familiar with the process to have them removed. These are, private property or private property bins on private property, so I'm not quite sure.
I guess some of them are. In the past, we've had them on sidewalks, on right-of-ways, and
in alleys.
Now, this will prevent all of that from happening, but what happens if they do stick one in an alleyway? We want to make sure that we're able to, for those kinds of things, I understand on the private property it may be different, but on the public property, be able to have a fine that they pick up the cost of the removal at the end of the day, even if we end up removing it ourselves.
I'm not sure if on the public property, if that would even fall under this ordinance, but perhaps planning could address that.
Well, this ordinance doesn't regulate, it only allows them on property, not on rights of way and not on the sidewalk. I'm not really sure who would be enforcing. You're saying that Building and Safety does not enforce. Maybe it would be Bureau of Street Services.
All right, so I'll leave that be at the moment, and just as one of my recommendations would be that we add on a request to potentially have fines for non-compliance on public property be raised to cover the cost of removal. Have we actually inventoried all the existing bins that are out there? Do we have a list? And is that going to happen when this ordinance is adopted?
We do not have a list, and that's not part of this ordinance.
So, but in theory, anyone with a bin is going to have to register it with us.
They will have to, yes.
And if it's not registered, then it's an unlicensed bin, and it's subject to fine and removal. An undocumented bin, an illegal bin. We'll call it undocumented. So the current process for removing these bins, how is the process going to change with this?
So what this ordinance accomplishes, it makes it clear that these bins require a permit, or they require a land use permit. So it makes it, it enables the department to cite the violations for clearly establishing bins without permits, and clarifies, I think more so also for city attorney for prosecution.
Another issue in here that seems to be missing is the ordinance. Currently, it seems silent on pickup requirements, how often they have to clean out these bins, because one of the issues we have is when they get neglected, they get flowing with things, and then junk is all around it even before somebody gets into it. Is there a reason why we don't have that in here?
Well, we require them to have a pickup schedule posted on the bin, and we require them to, the operators, to keep the area around the bin clean of donations and trash and other types of
Do we have a minimum requirement of how often it gets picked up?
No, we don't.
I'd like to add that we put on at least a minimum requirement, because someone could, if it's on their own, they'll say, we'll pick it up once every 2 decades. And that would meet our technical requirement. I'd say at least once a month or something. And then it's going to apply to existing and new bins, right? We're not going to grandfather in any existing bins, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how often will inspections occur after the application is submitted?
There are annual inspections.
Okay. Great. So the other thing I'm going to ask that we add in is a requirement that the council office gets noticed for all donation collection bin applications, that the office gets a copy of that application. And so when we're done with the questioning, I'm going to ask that we add that in as well. But that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blumenfeld. Mr. Price?
Thank you, your comments and your sympathy in the fact that these bins have just been proliferating and has been a real problem throughout the city. Let me just ask a couple of questions. I do have a couple of recommendations that sort of mirror yours, Councilman. But let me ask: is there a way for the community member to report a bin that's not being maintained? Telephone number or hotline? Can we add that kind of provision in?
Currently the ordinance requires the operator's name, phone number, email, website to be posted on the bin, and also instructions for anybody with a complaint to call 311.
Okay, I know that state law requires the owner or operator to have their number on an unattended bin, so I just want to make sure it's a number that we can use, one that's available 24 hours, on there, not just a number, but one that's actually functioning.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be a 24-hour. Nobody would necessarily be required to be answering the number for 24 hours. But
at least something, a place where someone can leave a message for 24 hours to make sure it's a pickup. If the owners or operators have been failed to remove it after, say, the 30th day of compliance period, and we confiscate the bin, how many days are we required to keep it in storage? I know we've got 30 days here, but can we do it in 15 days, in 10 days? What's the thinking on that?
Council member, there will be no confiscation, so it will fall into our normal code enforcement procedure where we issue that order to comply, we assess fees, we can move that quickly to the city attorney for prosecution, and it would be a court order that would order that defendant to remove that bin, but there isn't going to be any confiscation of the bin.
Is that something we want to consider, or what's your thought on that?
I don't believe our department has the resources for the collection of these bins. We don't have the storage or the vehicles to do that.
Okay. And Councilman Blumenfeld raised the issue about some notice when the bins are going to be emptied, and so I think I certainly support his as a friendly amendment moving forward with that. But I would like, Mr. Chairman, looking at the possibility of requiring that a phone number or hotline be required on every collection bin in order to facilitate the reporting of a nuisance, and it sounds like that is the case. But also, can we look into the possibility of reducing the time that is required to hold onto the bins before we can destroy them? Again, I think we should be doing this sooner than later, These folks that are non-compliant know they're bad actors, and I think we're just rewarding bad behavior. But I certainly will defer to the city attorney or to the department to address that and how we can, reassure our neighbors that we're serious about this.
Len is Lanin, Deputy City Attorney. I just wanted to touch on one of the comments raised by Councilmember Blumenfeld, if I may. This issue of bins on public or private property, as planning noted, the ordinance doesn't cover bins on public property and public right-of-way, and we can add provisions requiring full cost recovery for cleanup of these bins that are illegally posted or placed on public right-of-ways, separate from the issue of those that are on private property, which are covered by the ordinance.
Great. Any thoughts or comments on my question?
Could you repeat the question, Council Member?
Can we look into the possibility of reducing the amount of time the city is required to hold on to the bins before they are destroyed?
Yes, we can certainly look at that, Council Member.
The city currently does not collect the bins. They just, the operators and the property owners are notified that they need to be removed.
I've had the city pick up some bins in my area.
Councilmember, this is Kevin Keller, City Planning. I think just to clarify on my understanding of the issue is that this ordinance in front of the committee today is for only bins on private property. We really were brought into this because there is a separate issue for public property bins. In fact, when we did some research, some of those public property bins are actually smushed up against a wall, but they're actually on private property. So we wanted to have this ordinance address those. So on the private property side of the equation, we notice we do code enforcement, we don't confiscate. So our department won't have the expertise on the confiscation or the amount of time we have to destroy, but I do want to pick up on maybe the need to collaborate on the public side of the equation to make sure those bins are also addressed equally strictly. So we can take that back, but it may involve public works as the applicant.
That's fine. Let's involve whoever we need to make sure
absolutely.
that the sidewalks and streets and other areas are clear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you to staff and Mr. Keller as well. I just want to note this, the conversation that we just had is the kind of thing that is the source of confusion, frustration, and anger from residents. So we have a policy that we will remove an entire vehicle, a truck, a car, any kind of vehicle. We'll remove it if it's improperly placed on a place, but somehow we can't get a bin moved. Just to note the severity of this issue, in my first several months in office, we had a homeless person die inside a bin. They went inside the bin to retrieve a jacket. It was so hot that day that the person, by the time the person figured out how to get out, they lost their life. And even in that situation, after the body was removed and all that, it still took the city several weeks to move the bin, and it was on the sidewalk. So I just, want to make a note of that and sound the clarion call that it just, from the point of view of someone sitting in the neighborhood, it seems to defy logic that we can't figure out how to get an item that we've declared is illegal and has been demonstrated to be dangerous, that we don't have a straightforward way of getting it off of our streets. So, Mr. Smith, anything for the good of the order on this? All right. Mr. Mejia, we got a handful of amendments on this.
Yes.
You want to walk us through what we're looking at?
So the proposed ordinance will be, first of all, sent to city attorney as to form and legality. From my recollection, as to Mr. Blumenfeld's request, he brought up the issue of to raise the fee for full compliance, and he also indicated that the council office be notified and receive a copy of whatever citation that is issued. So those were two things and minimum requirements for pickup. That was Mr. Blumenfeld's request. And Mr. Price, brought up the issue of a number to call, and also, again, he also mentioned a full cost recovery for cleanup. Those were the ones that I collapsed.
Yeah, but it's a good one.
I don't know if there was anything beyond that.
Yeah, a couple other things.
Okay.
On the notice to council,
Yes, Councilman.
not just notice, but a copy of the application sent to the council office so we can see whose bin it is, what they're promising to do, all of that as part of that. There were two issues on the cost, full cost recovery for when it's on public property, and then requesting that the fines and noncompliance be better, be high enough on the private property as well. Ensuring a minimum of at least a monthly pickup, but to have that scheduled. And I had one more that I didn't mention that I wanted to put out there as well, which is, was listening to Mr. Price, the idea came, which is multiple violations. If a property owner has multiple violations, they would lose the ability to have bins on their property.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman.
Is that
One additional thing, members, is to ask for a report back from Public Works on the issue of removing bins on public property, because I think it's a Public Works issue, and they can report back on what they do. And
that's a great idea.
Also, Mr. Chairman, on shortening the time that we hold bins before they're destroyed, I think we're talking about 40,
be part of the Public
30
Works.
days, 45 days.
I think that
So
can
we
be part of
lessen
the
that,
Public
maybe
Works.
2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, report back. All right, so we got a number of amendments. Before we consider this, I've got one public comment speaker, Axel Palacios.
Hello, committee members. My name is Axel Palacios. I am Council Member Buscaino's Planning Deputy. I wanted to speak on this motion, on this piece of regulation. We're speaking in support of the regulatory framework. Just like the rest of the council members here, our council district has also been negatively impacted by the presence of these neglected bins. And during my time in the field, and as a lot of your field staff will probably attest to, we found some creative ways to try to get rid of these. And so I think what we really need to do in the future is really look at a way where we can actually remove these bins and find a way to give a bit more teeth to our enforcement departments to be able to get rid of these things. But other than that, we just want to speak in support of it. We thank you guys for all of your work on this. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
In addition, Councilman Price requested that there be a posting of the schedules as it relates to the pickup times.
Great, sounds good.
Excellent. All right, so I'll move the item as amended.
And it'll be a referral to city attorney as to the ordinance as to form and legality, along with the amendments, Councilman.
And the report back.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay. Hearing no objection, that'll be the order. Where does that leave us in terms of business for today, Mr. Mejia?
Public comment, Councilman? I
There's
think
no
you already
public-
did that.
We did public comment in the beginning.
Very good.
Excellent. We're adjourned. Thank you so much.